The Abrahamic Accords, hailed as a historic moment, sparked speculation. Is it the confirmation of the covenant signaling the onset of the final 7 years? Once deemed unbelievable, prophecies are now unfolding before our eyes, leaving us in awe. Recent years have witnessed the fulfillment of numerous prophecies, particularly concerning Israel and Jerusalem, central themes in biblical narratives. The White House lawn witnessed a momentous event involving Israel, prompting believers to ponder its significance. Let's dive into this video to explore its alignment with biblical prophecy. Approximately 4,000 years ago, a significant event unfolded as God entered into a covenant with Abraham, as documented in Genesis 15:18. On this occasion, God promised Abraham's descendants the land extending from the river of Egypt to the Great River. This covenant secured the land of Israel for Abraham's lineage in perpetuity. Within this covenant's framework, the Jews faced a pivotal moment when Jesus, their anticipated Messiah, was rejected. Consequently, they endured exile from their promised land at the hands of the Romans in 70 AD. This exile persisted for nearly 2 millennia until the remarkable resurgence of Israel in 1948. God initiated the reestablishment of the seed of Abraham in their ancestral territory, despite fierce opposition from surrounding Arab nations. The journey to peace. Amidst this historical backdrop, there emerged glimmers of hope for peace. In 1979, Egypt, under the leadership of Anwar Sadat, made a groundbreaking move by signing a peace treaty with Israel. However, this courageous step came at a cost, as Sadat was later assassinated by militants opposed to Israel. Subsequently, in 1994, Jordan followed suit by formalizing a peace agreement with the Jewish nation. Despite these strides towards peace, approximately 20 Arab nations staunchly refused to recognize Israel's legitimacy or establish diplomatic ties. In more recent times, the Abraham Accords have emerged as a testament to diplomatic endeavors. Prior to his presidency, Donald Trump prioritized achieving peace between Israel and its Arab neighbors. After 3 years of persistent diplomacy, significant progress has been made towards this ambitious goal. In a surprising turn of events, President Trump announced a groundbreaking peace agreement between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, stunning the world. Shortly after this announcement, Bahrain also declared its intention to establish peace with Israel. On September 15, 2020, representatives from Israel, the United States, the UAE, and Bahrain convened in Washington, D.C. on the White House lawn to formalize the agreement, thus giving birth to the Abraham Accords. The agreement's name, the Abraham Accords, resonated deeply with those familiar with biblical prophecies. In the book of Daniel 9:27, a prophecy suggests that a peace agreement between Israelis and Palestinians will precede significant events, including the Battle of Armageddon and the return of Jesus to earth. This prophecy hints at the confirmation of the covenant for 1 week, which some interpret as a 7-year period, possibly indicating the involvement of an Antichrist figure. Also, this intertwines with the covenant God made with Abraham, emphasizing the promise of his descendants to dwell in the land of Israel. Remarkably, the Abraham Accords, through their acknowledgement of Israel's right to exist in the land promised to Abraham's descendants, echo this ancient covenant. The role of the Antichrist in the peace process. The signing of the Abraham Accords has sparked speculation about whether it marks the confirmation of the covenant, signaling the beginning of the final 7 years, as prophesied. This raises questions about the identity and whereabouts of the Antichrist, the figure expected to confirm the covenant. While President Trump's involvement in the Abraham Accords is significant, it's implausible for him to be the Antichrist, as biblical scriptures indicate the Antichrist will emerge from Europe. However, the absence of a clear Antichrist figure in the current peace process raises uncertainty. The involvement of Palestinian leaders such as Mahmoud Abbas in the peace process is deemed crucial before the final agreement can be reached and the 7-year period begins. However, Abbas refuses to cooperate in a peace process led by President Trump, citing grievances over his recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Abbas advocates for international involvement in peace negotiations, particularly by the Middle East Quartet comprising the UN, EU, Russia, and the United States. Given the quartet's influential position in the peace process, if this proposal gains traction, it opens the possibility of the Antichrist playing a role in the final agreement. Amidst speculation about the identity of the Antichrist, the focus must shift to the crucial aspect of prophecy fulfillment. The signing of the Abraham Accords at the White House serves as tangible evidence of prophetic events unfolding, urging us to heed the warnings and implications outlined in biblical prophecy. Prophecies serve as the key to unlocking the future, guiding us through uncertain times. Delving into the scriptures, particularly Daniel chapter 9, reveals prophecies about rebuilding a temple in Jerusalem in the last days. This prophecy prompts reflection on the significance of Jerusalem and its role in fulfilling divine plans. While Jerusalem's restoration and subsequent reconstruction are pivotal, much remains undisclosed about the city's intricate history and future revelations. Despite this, the realization of prophecy underscores the importance of vigilance and spiritual discernment. As believers, it's imperative to diligently study and contemplate biblical prophecies, recognizing their relevance in shaping our understanding of the times ahead. Amidst the uncertainties, prophecy provides a guiding light, offering insights into the divine plan and urging us to remain vigilant and prepared for what lies ahead. Jerusalem, from distress to restoration. Despite portraying Jerusalem as a distressed entity in biblical literature, it was strategically located and fortified in the ancient world. Unlike its depiction, archaeological evidence reveals a city that was well established and often targeted for destruction. Parallel sites from similar periods to Jerusalem's existence illustrate a pattern of destruction, with layers of ruins indicating repeated attacks. Laish, considered the second most important site in Judah, endured destruction almost every century from the 10th century BCE until its final devastation by the Babylonians in 587 BC. Jerusalem itself faced earlier assaults, albeit not in parallel with attacks on Laish. When Jerusalem suffered complete desolation at the hands of Babylon, it seemed as though it was crushed forever, leading Babylon and its rulers to believe they had permanently subdued the Jews. Yet, despite the desolation and apparent abandonment, the certainty of Jerusalem's eventual restoration persisted. Despite the desolation and the belief of Babylon and its god, Satan, that they had achieved a definitive victory, it was inconceivable that Jerusalem would remain in ruins indefinitely. The absolute certainty of its rebuilding prevailed, reflecting a deeper significance tied to divine providence and the fulfillment of prophecy. The rebuilding of Jerusalem and the restoration of the Temple of Jehovah within its walls were seen as inevitable. This certainty stemmed from the profound significance of these events in Jehovah's plan, particularly concerning the promise made in the Garden of Eden regarding the coming Messiah. Biblical prophecies and faith. Jerusalem's restoration was assured for those who believed in Jehovah's word and understood the prophecies. They knew from Jeremiah's prophecy about the 70-year limit on Jerusalem's desolation and Isaiah's prophecy about its restoration and future glory. Moreover, they understood that the Messiah's arrival necessitated Jerusalem's existence and the presence of Jehovah's temple for true worship. Despite the bleak circumstances of the time, those with faith in Jehovah's promises remained steadfast in their belief that Jerusalem would not remain desolate forever, but would be rebuilt and flourish once again. This unwavering faith was rooted in the conviction that Jehovah's word would ultimately be fulfilled, ensuring the restoration of Jerusalem and the realization of his divine plan. During Judah's dark period of desolation, the royal and priestly lines faced dire circumstances. All of Zedekiah's sons, the last king of Judah, were killed, leaving only Jehoahaz, also known as Jehoiachin or Coniah, Zedekiah's nephew, as the surviving heir to the throne. Similarly, the line of the high priest faced peril, with Sariah executed by Nebuchadnezzar, but his son Jehozadak was spared and taken captive to Babylon. Despite these challenges, the survival of Jehoahaz and Jehozadak and the prohibition against foreign settlement in Judah during its desolation served as signs of hope for the faithful Jewish exiles. These events demonstrated God's miraculous preservation of the kingly and priestly lines, indicating his divine intervention in preserving the land for future restoration. A remarkable prophecy in Daniel 9:25 provided further assurance of Jerusalem's eventual rebuilding and the coming of the Messiah. The prophecy foretold the restoration and rebuilding of Jerusalem, indicating that the Messiah would arrive not in a desolate city, but in a Jerusalem rebuilt with streets and defenses. Despite the promise of restoration, the prophecy also acknowledged that this rebuilding would occur amidst times of trouble, underscoring the challenges accompanying the restoration process. In this passage, the angel Gabriel conveys a significant prophecy to Daniel, providing precise details about the timing of the Messiah's arrival in Jerusalem. Gabriel foretells that from the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the coming of the Messiah, there will be a total of 69 weeks, consisting of 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The prophecy hinges on the issuance of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, a city and temple left in ruins at the time of the prophecy. This decree was fulfilled when the Persian king Artaxerxes issued a decree on March 5, 444 BC, authorizing Nehemiah to rebuild Jerusalem. This decree marked the beginning of the countdown towards the arrival of the Messiah. It provides insight into the timing of the Messiah's arrival, indicating that Jerusalem would be rebuilt with streets and defenses, even amidst times of distress. The completion of the rebuilding of Jerusalem and its temple is attributed to Zerubbabel, with the temple restoration finished in 516 BC, the countdown to the Messiah. Almost a century after returning from Babylonian captivity, the Jews yearned for the restoration of their city. With the permission granted by the Persian king, they were poised to rebuild Jerusalem. This moment marked the beginning of a crucial countdown toward the arrival of the Messiah. The prophecy in Daniel provides a specific time frame from the decree to rebuild Jerusalem until the coming of the Messiah. It delineates 7 weeks and 62 weeks, totaling 69 weeks. In the Hebrew text, weeks translates to sevens, signifying weeks of years rather than days. Therefore, 7 sevens amount to 49 years, and adding 62 sevens equals 434 years, totaling 483 years. This time frame signifies that from the decree in 444 BC, there would be precisely 483 years until the time of Christ. This prophecy holds immense significance as it aligns with the arrival of Jesus of Nazareth, fulfilling the mathematical precision outlined in Daniel's prophecy right to the day. Daniel's prophecy stands as a testament to his status as a true prophet, with historical events validating his words. Firstly, Jerusalem's complete restoration, including rebuilding its walls and defenses, fulfilled the prophecy of the first 7 weeks. This monumental task was accomplished by 395 BC, confirming Daniel's accuracy. Following the completion of the first 7 weeks, the Messiah, referred to as the Prince, arrived after 62 weeks, totaling 483 years. Conversion to days was necessary to reconcile the discrepancy caused by the Jewish calendar's 360-day year. Counting down from 444 BC, the prophecy culminated in Christ's triumphal entry into Jerusalem on March 30th, AD 33, celebrated as Palm Sunday. This significant event marked the beginning of Christ's Passion Week, leading to his crucifixion just 4 days later. The return of the Jews to Jerusalem was facilitated by Cyrus the Persians, fulfilling Jehovah's prophecy in 536 BC. Despite laying the foundation of Jehovah's temple, opposition from Samaritan enemies led to interference and an official ban on the building work by the Persian government. Despite facing significant opposition and succumbing to fear, the Jewish remnant temporarily abandoned the crucial task of rebuilding the temple, focusing instead on their own homes. However, Jehovah's purpose prevailed despite their setbacks. He raised prophets like Haggai and Zechariah, who, armed with a powerful message from God, stirred the Jews to resume the temple construction. Inspiration from Haggai and Zechariah. In the second year of Darius the Great's reign, 15 years after the temple's foundation was laid, Haggai and Zechariah began to speak, revitalizing the Jewish community's determination to rebuild. Despite facing scrutiny from Persian-appointed officials, the Jews, inspired by the prophetic messages, fearlessly continued their work. The rebuilding efforts invoked the decree of Cyrus the Persian king as justification for their actions. The question of who issued the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem, mentioned in Daniel 9:25, has long intrigued biblical scholars. Many scholars assert that it was Cyrus who played a pivotal role in the rebuilding of Jerusalem, emphasizing the significance of his decree in the restoration process. Prophecies of Isaiah 44 and 45. The prophecies of Isaiah 44 and 45 shed light on the role of Cyrus, the Persian king, in the restoration of Jerusalem and the return of the exiles. According to these prophecies, Cyrus was designated by the Lord to fulfill his divine purposes, including rebuilding Jerusalem and laying the temple foundation. In Isaiah 45:13, Cyrus is depicted as the instrument of God's righteousness, tasked with rebuilding the city and releasing the exiles without expecting any payment or reward. Scholars and commentators interpret these prophecies as referring to Cyrus's pivotal role in both building Jerusalem and facilitating the return of the exiles. This aligns with the decree mentioned in Daniel 9:2, which involves the restoration of Jerusalem. Indeed, Cyrus's proclamation in Ezra 1:2-4 confirms his acknowledgement of the Lord's command to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. He instructed the exiles to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the house of the Lord, fulfilling the divine directive outlined in Isaiah's prophecies. The fulfillment of Isaiah's prophecy through Cyrus's decree to rebuild Jerusalem, leading to the return of Jewish exiles under Zerubbabel, is a subject of scholarly debate. Some scholars argue that Jerusalem's rebuilding was delayed until the time of Ezra, nearly a century later, under King Artaxerxes I. However, extra-biblical sources provide evidence that contradicts this notion. Contrary to the belief that Jerusalem's rebuilding was postponed until Ezra's time, early extra-biblical Jewish sources suggest otherwise, such as the apocryphal book of 1st Esdras and the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus. These sources indicate that Jerusalem's reconstruction commenced much earlier after the Babylonian captivity. Josephus in particular reports that after reading Isaiah's prophecies, Cyrus was seized with an earnest desire to fulfill them. He then granted permission to the eminent Jews in Babylon to return to their homeland and rebuild Jerusalem and the temple of God. This account corroborates the biblical narrative of Cyrus's decree and his role in initiating the rebuilding process. Opposition to rebuilding efforts. Despite Cyrus's intentions to facilitate the rebuilding of Jerusalem and its temple, the efforts faced significant opposition from the people of the land. In Ezra 4:1-5, we learn about how these opponents troubled the Jews in their construction endeavors, even hiring counselors to thwart their plans. This opposition persisted throughout Cyrus's reign and extended into the reign of Darius, the subsequent Persian king. Josephus also documented attempts to disrupt the Jewish rebuilding efforts, with opponents seeking assistance from governors and authorities to hinder the construction of the city and temple. These efforts succeeded in slowing down the rebuilding process during Cyrus's reign, as he was preoccupied with managing his kingdom's affairs and remained unaware of the schemes of the Samaritans. Despite the challenges posed by the opposition, the Jews, encouraged by what they perceived as a blessing from God, hastened their work on the temple. Despite the setbacks, the temple's construction was completed in less than 4.5 years. Ezra 6:15 records the temple's completion, stating that it was finished by the 3rd day of the lunar month, Adar, in the 6th year of King Darius's reign. By calculating the reign of Darius I from the year 522 BCE, following the death of his predecessor Cambyses, the temple's rebuilding concluded in March of 516 BCE, specifically after Adar and before Nisan. The timing of the temple's completion allowed for its inauguration in time for the Passover, which occurred in Nisan at the beginning of the 7th year of King Darius's reign. This inauguration, marked by joy and celebration, signified the full restoration of the worship of Jehovah at Jerusalem, a momentous occasion for the Jewish community. The temple's completion began preparations for the prophesied final 7 years. This period is expected to witness significant prophetic fulfillment, rivaled only by the ministry of Jesus Christ during his earthly tenure. During the first half of these final 7 years, Israel's third temple will be constructed on the Temple Mount, resuming animal sacrifices as part of worship. The abomination of desolation and the Great Tribulation. Following the resumption of sacrifices, the Antichrist will emerge, ordering their cessation while falsely claiming to be the Messiah and God. This pivotal event, known as the abomination of desolation, will herald the onset of the final 3.5 years, termed the Great Tribulation, characterized by unprecedented upheaval and tribulation. During the tumultuous Great Tribulation, God will send 2 powerful witnesses who will preach throughout the final 3.5 years. Despite the challenges of this time, their preaching will lead to a significant revival. Revelation 7. 4 prophecies, a remarkable Jewish revival during this period, with 144,000 individuals sealed from the 12 tribes of Israel. This revival will see a spiritual awakening among the Jewish people, marked by their commitment to God. Additionally, Revelation 7, 9, 14 foretells a great gentile revival. Just as in the early church, where Jews and Gentiles came together in revival, this period will witness a resurgence of faith among Gentiles alongside the Jewish revival. The Antichrist's rise to power will coincide with the signing of a covenant with Israel, marking the beginning of the 7 years known as the tribulation. The world will experience unprecedented trials and tribulations during this time, leading to widespread chaos and upheaval. Despite the darkness of the tribulation, the emergence of the 2 witnesses and the foretold revivals among Jews and Gentiles offer a glimmer of hope amidst the turmoil. These events underscore God's sovereignty and his enduring promise of redemption, even amid the greatest trials. During the tribulation, the world will be engulfed in terrible wars, famines, plagues, and natural disasters as God pours out his wrath against sin, evil, and wickedness. These catastrophic events will manifest divine judgment upon the unrepentant world. The 4 horsemen and 7 seals. The tribulation will witness the appearance of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, symbolizing conquest, war, famine, and death. Additionally, the opening of the 7 seals will unleash a series of catastrophic events, signaling the intensification of divine judgment. About halfway through the 7 years, the Antichrist will betray the peace covenant with Israel, instigating war against God's chosen people. He will commit the abomination of desolation by defiling the Jerusalem temple and demanding worship for himself. The second half of the tribulation, known as the Great Tribulation and the time of Jacob's trouble, will witness unparalleled chaos and suffering. The Antichrist's final assault on Jerusalem, culminating in the Battle of Armageddon, will mark the climax of human rebellion against God. At the end of the 7-year tribulation, Jesus Christ will return in glory to defeat the Antichrist and his armies. He will cast them into the lake of fire and bind Satan in the abyss for 1,000 years. During this millennial reign, Christ will establish his earthly kingdom, ushering in an era of peace, righteousness, and justice. So what do you think of the terrifying prophecy about the discovery of Jerusalem? Comment below and subscribe for more.